Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, this week's Tarot and Oracle spread is asking us to consider our relationship to time. Where do we place our attention? Are we placing our attention mostly in the past? Mostly in the future, or in the present moment? Are we thinking about the past, present, or future more? What do you think about yourself? Do you spend a lot of your time remembering things that happened in the past, events that you remember, feelings that you remember experiencing? Do you spend more of your time considering where you're going in the future, things you want to achieve, experiences you want to have? Or do you spend most of your time, or the great majority of your time, in the present moment, experiencing what you are feeling right now, what you are seeing right now, what you are perceiving right now? If you were to choose one of those three, past, present, or future, which would you say is the most important to you? This week's Tarot and Oracle spread is asking us to reflect on time and our relationship to it. And as usual, I've got a tarot spread all laid out, so let's dive right into it. I'm sorry to say that this is the last week that we will be using these decks. Now, the new moon has come and gone, and I will be changing out decks for next week, and the spread will be a little bit different. If you're interested in these decks and who created them, however, as usual, there will be a short clip at the end of the video which gives you that information. And also, as usual, in the description box below, there will be links if you want to go look at these decks, or perhaps purchase most of them or one of them for yourself. Now, I don't get any money from the people who purchase using those links. Those are just for your convenience. I will say that, unfortunately, one of these decks is out of print, just so you know. So we've got the tarot spread laid out. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. The images are wonderful, and the cards work beautifully together. If this is your first time, let me give you a brief outline. The central grouping of cards are oracle cards, and they give us the theme, the central idea of the spread. And around those oracle cards, there are 4 inquiry cards, cards with questions, and those questions are answered by 2 different tarot cards. So we're going to start from the central spread of oracle cards, the 5 cards in the middle. Let's take a look. Again, for this spread, I've laid out 5 cards for the center, and I've separated them into 5 elements. Now, generally, we think of there being 4 elements, right? Fire, water, air, and earth, but there's also a 5th element of spirit, or ether. And so I've used all 5 of those alchemical elements for this central oracle spread. And the top card is fire, the bottom is water, the card on the left is air, and the card on the right is earth, the one in the center is ether. And let's start with ether. So for this week, we've got zinc in the ether area. Zinc is the card of, what do we see? We see a person walking on their hands, their body curved up in a C, their feet above their heads, walking on their hands in a kind of circus position. And it's the card of the yogic healer. And what better representation of spirit can there be? Now, spirit, our eternal selves. And I don't want to even say our eternal selves. We don't own the eternity that we are. We are the eternity that we are. So, the eternal selves that we are. Spirit, soul, higher consciousness, universal mind. Zinc in this spread is the card of the healer. And that's what the eternal nature of us does for us as these physically manifesting human beings. Spirit, eternal self, is our physician because we get kind of beat up and banged around in these bodies having human experiences in this physical universe. So our eternal selves are here, always present with us to provide healing. Our eternal nature is soothing, as the moon is soothing. It's a buffer between what we feel as our internal realm and the outer world of the physical universe. It provides a buffer. And why did I say moon? Soothing as the moon? Because a lot of us are a little bit sun addicted. Let's be clear about that. Yeah, we're a little bit light addicted in the sense of we love the sun and we are afraid of the dark. Now, there is no absolute darkness in the universe. It doesn't exist. But we classify day and night, brightness and darkness, safety and danger, and we place danger in the nighttime. But there's another way of perceiving that difference. The sun can actually be pretty toxic for us, especially these days. We've done so much damage to the ozone layer that we have to be careful of our sun exposure. The light can burn. The light can be damaging to us if it is intense enough. And the darkness can be a time of soothing and healing. Now we go into a cave to heal from our wounds. And so zinc is that. It's that soothing of the moon, the soft, gentle light of the moon. The soft, gentle light in the darkness of the eternal nature of who we are. It's the card that maintains the physical and spiritual energy that we need. Because as we're here in physical bodies, we sometimes burn ourselves out. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever found yourself burnt out, as they say? Well, the eternal nature that we are is never depleted of energy and is never depleted of physical well-being. Is never depleted of emotional energy or spiritual energy, and it's always present for us to recharge and re-energize us. It bathes us in the golden light of the divine and of creation, because spirit is creation, right? This physical world was created from the non-physical, from spirit. And these bodies that we have are co-creations, certainly, but were initiated by spirit, by the eternal nature of us coming into this physical world and creating a physical presence within the physical universe. And that's all zinc. Now, spirit is here to protect us, to buffer us, is better, yeah? To buffer us, to energize us, to heal us, if we allow. That's the only thing we need to do. We want to allow the eternal nature of ourselves to do the work, to heal, to soothe, to bathe in creation. So the beginning is spirit, the beginning is ether. And from ether evolves fire, our passions, our creativity. And fire in this spread is radon. Now, radon is tempered with iron, will. iron will, the ironness of our will, the free will that we have. It can thrive in difficult conditions. Our passion can thrive in difficult conditions, and the physical world can be a difficult condition for many of us much of the time. We experience more extremes here in the physical realm than we did, or do, I should say, in the non-physical. Non-physical is pretty smooth, but the physical universe was created for extremes, for dichotomy, for the binary, for the duality of this and that, subject and object. And that can be difficult. And our fire can burn within that. Our creativity can burn within that and survive within those extremes. It's also the forming ground of our leadership. And fire is the wands suit in tarot cards, right? Now, fire, wands, is the card of leadership. So our fire, our passion, is where our leadership comes from. It's a card of expertise and proficiency and intentionality. Yeah, our intention flows from spirit and is directed by our passions, by our fire. Now, I usually describe the powerful force of intention as a river, a current, a water element. But intention really is also a fire element. It's energetic. It's leadership. It moves forward. So our intentions, while we can imagine them as a current of river because it makes sense to us in a physical realm, is also fire. And that fire flows from spirit, from the eternal nature that we are, into the world. And as it flows into the world, it merges with water, or it balances with water. When water and fire are in good balance, everything exists. When fire and water combine in correct and good and loving proportions, the universe is born. And what do we have for the water element, for this spread? We have helium, very odd element. Yeah? We think of water as H2O, hydrogen, 2 hydrogen atoms and oxygen. The element right after helium, right after hydrogen is helium. And in this oracle deck, helium is expressed as that which evolves from the hydrogen of water. It's the first offspring of hydrogen. So it's creative. It is a creation and creative. And our emotions, our water, our intention is also creative. So we've got that initial spark, fire of intention and creativity in fire, but we also have the flow of creativity, the flow of intention in the water element here with helium. We have essence, the sunbeam. Now, helium, hydrogen becomes helium and creates light, photons, flying out into the universe. So, the sunbeam, helium is a sunbeam. And it seeks and it knows abundance. And that's what our emotions are in their essential nature. Unresistant, without resistance. Our emotions are from our initial state of love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Through fire into our watery emotions, we start with those emotional states, love, joy, well-being as an emotional state, and awareness, pure, clear awareness as an emotional state. And perhaps also appreciation, gratitude for abundance. That's where our water starts out. That's our base point. The high base point, yes. And then we start experiencing and we start resisting things, and then we develop other emotional states. Now we develop the other side. We think of it as an other side of a spectrum, but that spectrum goes on into infinity. And on one side of it, we have, at the higher end, love, joy, well-being. At the other end, we have things like depression, powerlessness, unworthiness. And those are all on a spectrum, right? But as we are born into this universe, we are born in the emotional state of joy, well-being, love. And that's where we are, that's who we are, and where we return to when we leave these physical bodies. So we are reminded that the pure essence of our emotions are creative. The pure essence of our emotions are abundance. They're buoyant like helium. And we move away from them, certainly, as we experience life in these bodies, but our essential nature, our essential emotional state is all of that. And when we are awake to who we truly are, we experience those emotional states much more frequently. And the waves of highs and lows of our emotional states become less dramatic. Instead of going from peaks to joy to troughs of despair, we go from peaks of joy to troughs of hope, to peaks of joy to troughs of satisfaction, to peaks of joy to troughs of anticipation. And maybe dip down into boredom for just a moment and then realize that we can make another choice. So that card of helium reminds us of that. Our emotional state, our water, is naturally high, like a helium balloon. A balloon that's filled with helium rises. And our emotions are, like helium, naturally rising things if we're not clenched up with resistance. And that resistance expresses itself in many different ways, right? Fear, anger, pessimism. There are many, many labels for the varying kinds of resistance that we provide for ourselves in this human experience. And we don't have to deal with them all on our own. There's help. Remember, there's always help. But we also remember that our natural state is that joy, that love. And it's okay if we're not there. Because we came into this world, remember, to experience duality, to experience wanted and unwanted. We came here to do that. So the expectation that we will be always in joy and love is a false expectation, an unhealthy expectation, and an untrue expectation. However, we can modify the waves that we experience. And so we come from fire into water, and they birth air. Yeah? When fire meets water, the hydrogen and the oxygen atoms split, and we've got H2O, and we've got hydrogen floating off, and we've got other elements being born and creating nitrogen and air. And air, what card do we have for air in this spread? We've got iridium, which is an interesting choice, right? Iridium, a very solid kind of element, more solid than helium, certainly. But iridium is air, and iridium is iridescent in the dark. And if we think of the thoughts inside of our heads, air is the element of thought and communication. Yeah? So we've got the thoughts that happen, what we consider to be inside the head, but they're not really inside the head. Our thoughts are not contained inside of our skulls. I don't believe so. I hope you don't believe so either. Our thoughts are expansive and are downloaded into human language inside of our heads, certainly, but the thought itself is not contained in the brain. The brain processes the thoughts and translates them into human communication or human ideas or languages like English, Korean, Spanish, Swahili, whatever. But our thoughts are more expansive than the brains that we have inside these bony structures of skull. But still, they are thoughts. And we conceive of those thoughts as being in the dark in some way. And the thoughts being the light in the dark. So iridium makes sense. The way we consider our thoughts and our ideas as being these sparks, these bright lights. In a cartoon, the old cartoons, when somebody had an idea, there was a light bulb that went on above their heads, right? That's the light in the dark. So iridium for thoughts. Awakening consciousness. Now, we are consciousness as the eternal beings that we are. But awakening consciousness inside of the human experience is a little bit different. And so again, we have that rekindling or the reigniting of light in the dark, the awakening of consciousness from the unconscious, which we often think of as the water element, right? From the unconscious, the light appearing of consciousness. The transformative ability of mind. The spirit can transform, certainly, but as far as working in the physical realm, mind is where we begin the transformation of the material. Spirit creates material, and then we come in physical form and we do a different kind of transformation. We put stuff together. We bang things together and crack things apart and put things on top of other things. That kind of transformation of material happens in the mind. It's the tale of civilization. And that is what mind is, right? Civilization is born of the intellect, born of mind. And often, it's very interesting. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we have constructed civilization with these human minds of ours. And then we put that construct onto spirit after or as a reflection of us, these human beings in these human societies. We try to organize spirit in these human social structures that we have created for ourselves here in the physical realm, that are only human structures. They are not animal structures, they're not plant structures, they are human structures. And we try to cram spirit into those structures of, for example, the king and the noble class, and then the vassals, and then the peasants, and then the slaves below. We try to organize spirit into those human social structures, and now we have a more democratic structure for the non-physical that we're trying to cram all of that non-physical energy into. But honestly, non-physical is not that. There is not a hierarchy to non-physical. There are not supreme gods and then servant angels and then angels below those angels and then the human soul, spirit below them. There's not a hierarchy like that. It's all a unity. It's all an integrated oneness. But we want, as human beings in these human minds, to structure things and put things in boxes and give them names and labels and all of that stuff. So we got all these names for the divine spirit of God, Allah, Brahman, divine mother, great mother. Now all these labels we place on non-physical to put non-physical into the box that this is my box, that's your box. And that's not how it works. However, there is a beneficial part to the mind, and we structure society as we evolve as human beings in this physical realm. So there's also the beneficial side to that. The awakening of consciousness from the unconscious mind is a beautiful thing. Awakening in a physical body is a beautiful thing. And if we don't manage to awaken inside the physical body, we reawaken as we leave the body, so that's not a big problem if we don't awaken in these bodies. There's no failure going on here. There's no getting it wrong or doing it wrong going on here. But it's also a beautiful thing to be able to awaken inside of a body. To awaken to the real nature that we are. And that's what Iridium is here to remind us of. That from the water element that we can awaken as mind. Awaken beyond ego. I don't believe we want to destroy ego or suppress ego or sublimate ego. We want to befriend ego because ego is our friend here in this physical universe in human society. But we want to awaken beyond ego so that we are in right relationship, so that we can take care of ego rather than ego thinking that it has to take care of us. And then from the mind, we finally have earth, the stuffness of this physical universe, the material, the hardness, the boundariness of this material realm that we came here to enjoy because we created to enjoy. Does that make sense? Let me say that once more. The physical realm with all these boundaries and their thisness and thatness, the subject and objectness of this physical realm is wonderful. We as eternal non-physical beings created this to enter into it and enjoy it and experience it and realize and evolve through and with it. So this earth element is beautiful. And the earth element is an interesting card from this oracle deck. It is, and just a moment, I have to read this off to the side here. I'll be right back. It is Darmstrandium. Not a word I say very often. Darmstrandium. Now this is an element that was theorized to have to exist because it fills a spot in the periodic table of elements. And Darmstrandium was created, but it has a very, very short half-life. It degrades very, very quickly. The most stable of these atoms, there are variations of each atom, radioactive atom, like uranium. You know, uranium has different, there are more stable forms of uranium and less stable forms of uranium, and some degrade more quickly than others. Yeah, and just as uranium has different isotopes, I think that's the right word, isotopes, so does Darmstrandium. And the most stable isotope of Darmstrandium degrades in 12 seconds. That's the longest it can live in the world, 12 seconds. And that's the most stable. The least stable is like a flash in and a flash out. Which, if we think of the eternity of non-physical, that's what this physical universe really is. It's a flash, right? But it also reminds us of something else, I believe. And reading the description of Darmstrandium reminded me of a quote that is often used from T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Man. And Let me read the ending 2 lines of this quote. "This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper." Now, if you've seen the recently released Don't Look Up, that's not exactly what this is talking about, I don't believe. But T.S. Eliot was imagining the end of the world. And rather than the end of the world being a big crash like in Don't Look Up, where there's a huge comet that crashes into the earth and blows it to bits, T.S. Eliot imagines the end of the earth, the end of the world, as being something different. Not being a bang, but with a whimper. With a soft, sad cry in the void. And this Darmstrandium is not a card of the end of the world. This spread is not predicting the end of the world. But perhaps the end of a millennium. The end of an epoch. And the beginning of the next. And in that transition doesn't happen with a bang like, pow, here we are, with horns and trumpets of joy or bombs and explosions of doom, but rather with, oh, yeah, we end one and we begin the next. It's not necessarily going to be a dramatic thing. And it's not necessarily a dramatic thing, I think, because of this. This card reminds us first that the transition is marked by, and I'm reading this again in just a moment, by the infinitesimally small ring of a bell. Like this. Would be the end of an epoch. But notice this. When does the bell end? Can you tell me, when does this bell end? It's still going. It's still going. It's still going. And the end of an epoch is like that. It's not a bang, it's a slow transition. And perhaps even such a slow transition that there's not really an end and not really a beginning. It's an evolution. And I think that's what this card is reminding us of. It's reminding us that instead of looking forward or looking back to put a line of demarcation between this epoch and the next, what we really want to do is to stay present in the moment and recognize the ever evolving now. Those boxes that we put around epochs, like the Middle Ages, the Roman Empire, the Information Age that we consider that we're in now. Or maybe we've gone beyond the Information Age to a post-Information Age, to a media age, an image age, whatever we want to call these ages. Those discrepancies, those borders of the beginning and the end of this are human constructs and are not real. They're not the truth. They're tools for describing things and putting things in boxes and analyzing things and comparing things, but they're not the honest truth of what's happening. The Information Age did not really begin in a split second or a moment, or even with an idea. The Information Age is a slow evolution into another age. So this card is in the physical realm, asking us to stay present to the moment. To remember that those boxes that we try to create are imaginary. They're an illusion. They don't exist. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is the present moment, the ever-evolving and transmuting and transitioning now and now and now and now. And so when we imagine the flow of intention, we think that we're placing things out into the future, but it's not really the future. We're placing things into the now. And that river of intention, that powerful current of intention is contained in the present moment. And it energizes us in the present moment, moving us now and now and now and now, directing us here, there, and there, but now. It's not changing our course in the future, it's shifting, it's helping us shift in the present moment, like a dance. And that's what this card, this oracle spread in the center, is trying to remind us of. To stay present in the now. To take advantage of the healing that we provide for ourselves as the eternal beings that we are, in the dark, healing and energizing ourselves as spirit. Yeah? Beginning the creating process in the now, as the fire that we are with our passions, and buoying ourselves up in the now, in joy and love with the water of our emotions. And as our emotional joy and our passions of fire merge and meet, we create the air of mind which awakens in the now. And as the mind awakens in the now, the mind begins to shape and form and play with and create with the material objects in the now. Always transforming, always evolving, always becoming in the present moment, in the now. And that's what awakening to the present moment is all about. It's not an awakening to transcend and to leave the physical universe, although we will have the opportunity to do that, because we are in the non-physical universe now as well. The non-physical realm now. We are there. And we are there and focused here. We are both. We are all. In the ever-present, eternal now. So friends, this is a big idea. And what does that mean for our lives? What does that mean for us in the eternal now? We have 4 questions that will help us to wrap our minds around this a little bit better. And let's take a look at that first question. The first question asks us, what are our boundaries? And that's what we imagine when we think of this physical realm, right? The boundaries. This is where I begin and end, right here. But that's not really the truth. Those boundaries that we imagine are not real. They're constructs of our mind. It looks like my body goes to this point and then there's the outside, right? But if we really look at this, we'll see that this is porous. Now, the outside enters and the inside leaves. There's no real true boundary here. Especially on the atomic, subatomic level, there's no real boundary here. And this body is a process, not a thing. There is no continuity. I mean, there's continuity. There is no thisness of this body. Because as I'm speaking, there are atoms that are flying out into the universe, and there are atoms that are coming in from the universe and incorporating themselves within this space that I call a body, or that you see as a body. There are no real boundaries. This chair that I'm sitting on is a construct of mind. And it's a helpful construct. We like these boundaries, but they are constructs of mind. And so the answer to this question, where are my boundaries? The answer was a little bit confusing for me at first, honestly. What do we have? We have two cards, the waxing quarter moon, or the first quarter, and the Ace of Pentacles. Both of them very moon-like, right? You noticed that? Let's start with the quarter moon, the waxing quarter, the first quarter. It's the time for action. It's the time for decision making and taking on challenges. What does that have to do with boundaries? Now we think of boundaries as limits. Yeah, I'll go this far, but I won't go farther. Or I'll let you this close, but you can't come closer. We think of these as boundaries. And the answer to this boundary question first is time for action, moving out. Decision making. Now that can happen within a boundary, sure. Taking on challenges, another expansive idea. And then to the right of that, we have the Ace of Pentacles, which is new financial or career opportunities, another expansive idea. It's the seed planted, but it's the seed planted and beginning to germinate. It's the card of manifestation, of abundance and financial gain, but all physical gain. Now, it could be the gain of health. Our health is also part of this Ace of Pentacles card. Our cash money is part of it as well, but also other physical resources like the food, time. Time is a physical resource. Time is in this physical universe. So resources like time, the expansion and abundance and gain of those resources is the Ace of Pentacles. And how does that relate to boundaries? What kind of limits are those two cards suggesting? And I think they're suggesting that the question needs to be reimagined. They're reminding us that where are my boundaries? Well, they're wherever we set them, but if we live in the ever-present now, we realize that those boundaries are imaginary, and we are eternally in the moment, evolving, growing, manifesting, taking advantage of resources, deciding, making decisions, and then acting upon them, expanding. The ever-expanding now, the ever-evolving present moment. That's what our boundaries are. They are illusions of our expansion. And when we start to make boundaries that are too defined, too strong, too lacking in porousness, how do I want to say this? When they become too rigid, that's it. When our boundaries become too rigid, we begin to stagnate on the inside of those boundaries. If we use boundaries, and as physical beings, having boundaries are helpful. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have boundaries, or that they aren't a healthful way to exist in this physical universe, in a human society. Boundaries can be very helpful. However, what kind of boundaries are we going to create for ourselves? Are they going to be porous? Are they going to be expansive? Or are they going to be rigid and limiting? And the more rigid and more limiting they are, the less well we will be on the inside of those boundaries. Especially if we maintain the rigidity and strength and doorlessness of those boundaries for too long. Over time, they become smothering. And we may need them for a moment. We may need them for a period to heal from an experience, from a heartbreak, from some damaging event in our lives. However, the longer they exist, the more we will shrink within those boundaries. When what we are is expansive beings of well-being, love, and joy. That's who we are as we came into these bodies. And we still are, beyond the resistance that we create. So what are our boundaries? They are what we create of them. And our goal is to have them be as porous, as expansive as we can, so that we can evolve within them and beyond them even. That we can take action and move beyond them. Sometimes carry them with us, but also move beyond them. Let's take a look at the second question. This second question, I usually dislike it when it appears because it unsettles me. What's the joke? What is the joke? And then if we think about it, what is the joke? Coming from that first question, what are my boundaries? And we realize that those boundaries are imagined, are constructs of the human mind. So what is the joke? Well, that's part of the joke. The part of the joke is that the boundaries are constructs, are imaginary. The other part of the joke is that within those constructed boundaries, we have the Empress and the Three of Cups, which reflect each other beautifully. The Empress, the card of fertility. And we see the Empress sitting on her throne with her scepter in her hand in the expansive environment of nature. She is fertility and nature. She is abundance and creativity. She is beauty. And that's who we are. We are the Empress. She is nurturing. So not only within our boundaries, not cut off from other people, she is also the one who nurtures those around her. And those being other humans, also other living beings, also all of this physicalness, and also the spiritualness of where we are in this eternal now. So the joke is, those boundaries that we create for ourselves cut us off from our potential as the Empress, oftentimes. And then you notice that she is looking at the Three of Cups. In the Three of Cups, we have three looking female beings holding three different. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me get this. Let me go back to the. Let me start that again. I'm sorry. Okay, Three of Cups. We have three female beings, all looking a little bit different, all having perhaps their own individual traits, their individual talents, their individual abilities, their individual desires, intentions, their individual flows of intention, coming together and sharing emotion, sharing creation, sharing water, liquid, sharing space. Three of Cups is the card of celebration, of jubilee, of merriment and joy. And we come together for that. We co-create in joy, in merriment, in celebration. The first spark of the Big Bang was a celebratory event. And was an event that wasn't a single moment event. As we study what we imagine as the Big Bang, a lot of times, a long time ago, we thought of it as this moment, this spark where, boom, the universe began. But now we realize that that is not really the case. There was not a spark, a moment of beginning. It was an evolution. And there was an expansion of speed, certainly, but it wasn't like a momentary beginning. Because there was no momentary before beginning, we can't really describe that in words. But the Big Bang, it wasn't like it happened on Tuesday at 12:30 and 12:30 at 22.6 seconds, and it happened in a space of time of a millisecond. We can't say that. So, let's get back to the Three of Cups. The Three of Cups, celebration, joy, jubilee, merriment, flows directly from the Empress, because the Empress doesn't do it on her own. Because this physical manifestation is not a singular event. It's a co-creative event. It's the card of creativity, which flows from the Empress. The Empress's creativity is also echoed in the Three of Cups. It's the card of collaboration, because again, the Empress doesn't do it all on her own. The Empress co-creates. We all co-create. And it's the card of friendship, because a co-creative event is an event of friends. And that's the joke, that we're not here to do it on our own. So these boundaries that we believe we have need to be porous, because this is a co-creative event. And that's the joke. Are you laughing? Let's take a look at the third question. We have flowed from what is the joke to what is the loving choice? What is the most loving choice? So, what is the most loving choice? We've got two cards here. We've got the Six of Cups and we've got the Seven of Swords. An interesting combination. The most loving choice, let's start with the Six of Cups. In the card we have here, there were 6 cups kind of floating in the air, which is odd. Usually in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, what do we have? We've got 5 cups on a wall with flowers blooming out of them, and we have 2 smaller humans looking like they might be children. One childlike being handing 1 cup over to another smaller childlike being. And we see this as the card of nostalgia, of childhood reminiscence, memories, innocence, and joy. So, what is the most loving choice? The most loving choice is to begin with remembering the loving experiences we've had in the past and bringing them, that joy, into the present. Because that past no longer exists. What we remember is not the reality of some imagined past time. What we remember is our recording of that. And my recording of a past event is going to be very different from a different person's recording of that same event. Our recordings are different. We have very different experiences of the same events. So we go back and we review the films that we have stored up in our brains or wherever we store those films. And we look for the joy, the innocence, the childhood nostalgia or the younger nostalgia of those beautiful moments. And we bring those forward into the present. Remembering those successes, remembering the love we shared, remembering the co-creation of joy that we had. And then we look to the Seven of Swords, which is usually a very negative card. Yeah? It's often described as a card of betrayal, of getting away with something, of cheating, perhaps, of the thief in the night. And I don't think that's the loving choice. I don't think that's the answer that this card is trying to give. There are other meanings for the Seven of Swords. One meaning could be acting strategically. Yeah? Planning out your course of action, of your plans for creation. It's a card of impulsiveness and spontaneity, and that could be a good choice. That could be a loving choice. Because after we've made those plans, if we sorry, I've got a sword in my throat. If we are too attached to the plans that we've made, if we're not able to act spontaneously and have follow an impulse, we will not be as successful as we could be. Now, our rigid attachment to our plans makes life more difficult and is not following the powerful force of intention, because the powerful flow of intention is full of those moments of spontaneous ideas and inspirations and intuitions that say, go here, go there. Now, acting impulsively can be a loving choice. Acting on the impulse to buy flowers for someone you love can be a loving choice. It's a card of going our own way and following our own path, which is really what living an intentional life is. We co-create, certainly, and that was one thing that we saw in the previous question. We co-create. But those co-creations are because we are on parallel paths of co-creation. They're parallel paths, but we're all, each of us is on our own path. And that's what this card is reminding us of. That we're on our own path, and demanding that somebody else be on our path is foolishness, if nothing else. We are on our own path, and that's what this Seven of Swords card is reminding us of. That is the loving choice. Not following somebody else's path, and not demanding that somebody else follow ours, but being on our own path and co-creating when our paths are parallel. That is the loving choice. To flow with the remnants, with the memory of joy from our past into the future, remembering that both past and future are imagined, and in the present moment recognizing that we are on our own path, going our own way, and able to be spontaneous, able to be impulsive, acting in the moment, because that's all that really is the present moment. And those moments of spontaneity and synchronicity. So that's the loving choice, to be here in the present moment and carrying forward what we've had in the past. The good stuff. And we can make choices about those. Let's take a look at that fourth card. Or fourth question. I'm sorry, the fourth question. Before we look at the fourth question, let's do a brief review. We've moved from where are my boundaries? They're expanding. What's the joke? Because I'm creative. I am a creative thing. I am an evolving thing. So I can't have a boundary that limits me, because I am expansive and I'm co-creative. And a boundary would prevent co-creation. That's the joke. What is the most loving choice? That I'm following my own path, that I'm flowing with my powerful current of intention from a past, and I can carry those joyful moments of remembering the beauty that I have co-created in the past, those beautiful reminiscences, into the present as I look at an imagined future. So, what needs to be balanced in this present moment? As I've realized what the loving choice is, what needs to be balanced in the present moment. And we have two cards, beautifully placed together. The High Priestess and the Three of Swords. We notice that both are female figures and both are looking at each other. And these two, the representations of these two female figures, we want to have them in balance. The High Priestess, card of intuition, the card of sacred knowledge, the knowledge that we have from our ancestors, from our non-physicalness of self, from the eternal nature that we are, all of that sacred knowledge that we carry with us, within and with us. The subconscious mind, the information that we store within the subconscious ocean of our mind. It's also the card of clairvoyance, of premonition, of perceptivity. All of those clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all of the clairs. Is the card of the High Priestess. And a lot of people see the High Priestess as, and I've mentioned this before, as a gatekeeper to knowledge, and she's here to prevent us from getting past her. And I don't see her as that. I don't see her as the gatekeeper. I see her as the librarian. And if you think librarians are gatekeepers and are preventing you from finding what you want, then we need to rethink what a librarian's purpose is. Speaking as a volunteer librarian, let's talk. Librarians are not here to prevent you from getting what you want. They're here to help us to get what we want. Because of the vastness of the library, it's helpful to have a guide and helpful to have someone point us in the right direction or to help us find things. And that's what I see the High Priestess as being. The librarian of sacred knowledge, the librarian of the unconscious mind, who will either ask us, okay, so what are you looking for? Well, here, why don't you look in this direction? Or, oh, you want to search around a little bit? Are you okay? Will you be okay in this vastness of the library that you are? Really? Okay, then she'll let you get in. She's not here to prevent, to block like a security guard. She's the librarian. I'm going to say that from now on. I just came up with that now. She's the librarian of sacred knowledge, not the security guard. And we want to balance her with the Three of Swords, which is an odd card. And I've had a revelation about the Three of Swords card just last night, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But first, traditionally, what do we see the Three of Swords card as meaning? We usually see it as the card of heartbreak, and that's usually the key word that everybody says, heartbreak. You notice that in this deck there is no heart. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, what do we see? We see a rainy background. We see a kind of almost cartoonish looking human heart, or maybe it's another animal, but a heart. And there are three swords stabbed into that heart. And sometimes there's blood dripping off of it. And people look at that card and they say heartbreak. They say emotional pain, suffering, grief. And there are elements of that in the Three of Swords card, certainly. But remember, this is a swords card. This isn't a cups card. This isn't a card of emotion. It's a card of mind. It's a card of communication. If this had been like a Three of Cups card and the heart had been broken apart into three different cups, then I would say, yeah, it's all emotion and heartbreak. But this is a mind card. For me, especially. And so what do we get? Well, one way of perceiving it is that the things that we learn from heartbreak, what we carry forward, the growth that we have, the understanding that we carry from the pain, from the suffering. And that makes sense to me in a way. And up until last night, that's the way I saw this card, is the knowledge we've gained, the wisdom we have gained from heartbreak and sorrow and grief. And so that would be a good balance, right? We've got the knowledge of our unconscious, subconscious, and eternal selves, that sacred knowledge. And then the more human knowledge that comes from the heartbreak and suffering that we have. If we have those in balance, we're good to go. That's what we want to have balanced. The different sources of knowledge. Because we have different sources of knowledge. And if we're too focused on one and not focused and don't have it balanced out with the other, we get into problems. If we're only focused on the heartbreak and the experiences we have in these physical bodies as we relate with other people, and we ignore the sacred knowledge that we have, we become out of balance. Just as equally, if we focus entirely on our unconscious knowledge and spiritual knowledge and our spiritual selves and all of that wonderful stuff, and we ignore what's happening to us in this physical realm as physical beings, we go out of balance. We want to have a balance of the fullness of our experience. Because they're not separate, really. Yeah, our sacred knowledge and our experiential knowledge are not separate. So we want to balance this unity so that we don't tip too far in one direction or the other. But I got a new realization of the Three of Swords last night. In meditation, yes, okay, I'll say it. I was meditating and I got a realization about the Three of Swords. And I remembered that, yes, there's a heart with swords sticking in them. And then I thought, yes, our swords, our mind, those thoughts are what caused the heartbreak. It's our thoughts that are piercing our hearts and causing pain. Those negative thoughts, those thoughts of unworthiness, those thoughts of betrayal, those thoughts of being wounded by others or by ourselves. Now, we do a pretty good job of beating ourselves up too. All of those thoughts, we are the ones who jab them into our hearts. We're the ones who thrust those thoughts into our emotional cups, our hearts, the locus of our emotions. And we have the choice to pull them out and heal. Those swords didn't get into that heart by accident. And nobody put them in from the outside. Nobody can really jab those thought swords into our hearts from the outside. We're the ones who picked up the swords and jammed them into our hearts ourselves. And so we have the choice to remove them and heal. And grow in knowledge and grow in understanding and grow in maturity and evolve. Which is the reason why we came into these bodies in this physical universe. To grow, to evolve, to create, to make choices. I don't want this, I want this, and I want more of this, and then I experience this, and then I realize that, yes, I enjoyed this part, I didn't enjoy this part, so I want more of this, I don't want this, and let's get this to expand. All those thoughts, all those choices, all those decisions, we came into these bodies to make those. Not to be attached to them. And it's being attached to them where we take those swords and we thrust them into our own hearts. So we want to pull those swords out of our hearts and balance that knowledge that we gain with the knowledge that we came into these bodies with as spiritual beings having a human experience. That's where our balance wants to be. And we can only do that living in the present. When we move into the past and think about the joyful experiences or the painful experiences, we are not evolving in the present moment. We carry those understandings into the present moment, we evolve. When we're thinking about the future, we're not evolving. We bring those plans into the present and we start creating. First energetically, then with the fire of passion, then with the emotions of joy, and then with the mind of clarity, and then with the physicality of manifestation. In the evolving present moment. And that's what this spread is here to remind us of. It's all here in the now. With expansive boundaries. Realizing that we are expansive because we are creative beings. Making the loving choice of being on our own path and not requiring anybody else to follow ours and not following anybody else's, and bringing what we have gained from our experiences forward into the future, forward into the now, I should say, and balancing our sources of understanding, our sacred and our profane. Not profane like swear words and the F-bomb profane, but the profane of the physical realm. That's what profane really means, the physicalness. Balancing that spiritual wisdom with our physical, human manifested knowledge. And that's how to experience fully the present moment and evolve within it. And that's what living an intentional life is, really. So friends, in just a moment, we're going to get a little video clip showing you the cards from this week's spread. Take a look at that. And check the links below if you're interested in buying one or some of these decks on your own. And hit the like button, please. I'd love to see that you've watched and gained something from this. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. And hit the alarm bell if you have not hit that yet. Also, share this with somebody who you think might get benefit from it. If you know of anybody who you think might learn something or remember something from watching this video, share it with them. And also comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Does this make sense to you? Does it not make sense to you? Is there something you'd like to chat about in this topic? I'd love to talk about it. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.